Working together, I hadn't thought about that. And our third speaker is Susan Bandler, who's a teacher, and we've gotten her because she had no experience with a volunteer or very little experience with a volunteer in the classroom. She's been a teacher at DC Public Schools since 2003, which I calculate to be 7 years. And before that, she's been in Bogota, Colombia, at an international school. Prior to that teaching, she worked with the New Israel Fund, an organization which some of you may or may not know about, which supports civil and human rights in Israel. She attended McGill University, Harvard Graduate School. She has been around the world, 2 years in Colombia and 4 years in Israel, and now is fortunately teaching in public schools in Washington.
It's always kind of a challenge to be the last one because everybody kind of said all the good things. So I guess I'll just kind of share a little bit about, myself and how I kind of got to be standing here today, and how I view the potential for ReSET volunteers. It's like a little intimidating to say this in this crowd, but I'm like the non-science person here. I was the kid who never liked it in high school, even though I did okay. I never understood it. I remember a friend of mine is now a doctor, doing chemistry with him, and it occurred to me he understood. I kind of knew how to do it, but I didn't really understand what was happening. I went to university where I didn't have to take science, so it's been a long time since I did a science class. Then I kind of did various things. I started teaching, so again, I don't know if I was scared. I just thought, well, I'm just not going to do that. I'll do my English, even math, social studies. And then a couple of things happened. One of them, I would see some of my colleagues teaching science, and so the kids, were really into it. And I actually teach in a bilingual school, Spanish-English, and my kids went to a bilingual elementary school, and science was always taught in Spanish. And I asked, so why? It's like, well, they're going to really want to learn the language that way, because they're going to be doing things. All the stuff that we've been talking about, that it's appealing to all different kinds of learners. They're watching, and they're going to look for the vocabulary in Spanish to talk about it. They're moving around. They're appealing to much more than just the paper, book, and pencil. So I thought, science is working because kids are so curious about lots of things. They got loads of questions. They got to be taught to kind of ask questions and look for the answers. So then, through various non-science, non-education reasons, I met Harold. I guess 3 or 4 years ago, and learned about the ReSET program, and thought, wow, this is great. This is really neat. How can I kind of get involved? So Rich had come into my classroom for, I guess, about a semester, 2 or 3 years ago, and that was my one experience. And I guess there are just a couple of things that I think are really important for the scientist or engineer who comes in. And one is, as is really evident from our 2 speakers before, just that expertise, passion, experience. That this is somebody who's a real life scientist coming in, sharing with the kids. And even though there are discipline issues, clearly the kids, when there's somebody from outside, they're like, wake up, oh, this person is not the person I see every day. Maybe there's something neat for me to hear. And that person is going to, bring in just a lot more than is in the textbook or these little, science boxes of experiments. And even if they kind of use what's in the textbook, there's always, an extension, something else to bring to it. And clearly, we've heard today, and, if you read papers at all, science education is just not given, much attention because of all this testing, and which is a whole other conversation. But it, but it just kind of gives a really nice opportunity, and to sort of focus on the science and get kids excited about the science. And I guess the other thing, and Rich actually mentioned this in the introductions, that I think can't be overestimated, is that career possibilities. That, my dad was a lawyer, my mom was a teacher. I don't think I knew a few doctors. I don't think I knew any scientists growing up. So, it's not that much of an accident that, I didn't kind of pursue science. The kids I teach, their families, work in construction, work in restaurants, clean houses, maybe work in retail, and we're talking to them all the time about going to college. For most of them, they're going to be the first, if they do it, going to be the first kids in their families who go to college. And they don't know what that means. They know what teachers are, because they see a lot of teachers, maybe a doctor, but just for people to come in and to say, oh, you really like science, and this science is interesting to you, so this is something you can do. Maybe even when you go to middle school and high school, you can, start specializing. Maybe people here have ideas for internships as they kind of, as they go older. So I think that's really something that can be incorporated into what you do in the classroom. It could really have, lasting benefits for the kids. I guess just to kind of, reinforce some of the things that were previously said. You guys just sound like you're doing tremendous. You like to be teachers. And I think it's also, you probably realize in doing that just how hard the teacher's job is, because, every day you go in there and, it's like every year, and the teachers in my school have been doing that 20, 30 years. You try to anticipate everything that could go wrong and be prepared with all your materials, and inevitably something happens and you have to be thinking on your feet. So, there's a lot of preparation to go in for your 45-minute or hour class. And that idea of sort of looking and seeing what the teacher is doing, working on their math or their vocabulary, is really, because everything that's brought together for the kids is just going to help them kind of get in there a little more. And that collaboration, between the scientist and the teacher, so that you're really just getting your bang for your buck, that it's sort of in the streamline of what they're doing. It sort of reinforces what might have happened, it previews what sort of goes on, and that they are, they can sort of draw on this when they sit for those DC CAS exams, which, they take a lot of their time and energy in the classroom. So I think that's kind of my short little thoughts on volunteering and bringing more scientists into the classrooms.